Your intuition is telling you something. I know you sense it. That's why I wanted to come on today and talk to you. Think of me as your friend who walks you through reinventing yourself, reimagining life. Because I've done it. I've done that thing where I've left my career midstream, the middle of life, just said, no, it's time for a change. And it didn't make sense, but it did in my intuition. I've been that friend who said, I'm feeling the need, I'm feeling something. Intuition is telling me something has to change. And so I sold my house and I moved to Lisbon. And now I'm talking to you from a couch in my bedroom in Lisbon, Portugal. It was crazy and it didn't make sense to most people, but it made sense to me. If you're thinking that something has to change and you don't quite know what that is and you're scared of the unknown, maybe feeling a little bit afraid of giving up what you do know because you're not sure if where you're going to go will work out. I've been there, and here's what I want you to do. I just want you to set me up on a counter while you're doing dishes. I want you to put me on a table while you're cooking, or set me on your dashboard while you're driving, and just listen. Let's just talk. Let's just talk about what life looks like if you were to really try something wild and crazy, something that your intuition is calling you to. Maybe you're looking around at your friends and your family and no one is living that life that you're feeling like you're starting to crave. Maybe you want to start a business or leave your job or leave the country. There's just something different and it's bubbling inside you, and I can tell, and that's why I'm here. I want to give you encouragement and inspiration and the motivation that you need just to take that first step towards that thing that you want. Because I've been there. I remember I made some videos before this, and you can check back earlier a few days ago where I talked about leaving my career and how crazy that was. I had 30 days worth of savings and no backup plan. But I'll tell you another story about when I sold my house back in 2014. And it was a year after I had left my job. And, we were saying, let's just downsize. Let's just, get into something smaller so that our monthly payments are smaller, so we're not struggling every month. And so we put our house on the market, and we did that thing. I had 3 kids at home. One was in middle school, but the younger 2 were 3 and 4, and so every week or so we'd have to clean the house and then get out of the house and wait for people to see it and come back in, and we had to always keep the house nice and tidy. And that was a lot, and it was really scary, and it's like, we don't know where we're gonna go once this house sells. But we feel that intuition calling us to maybe downsize, let's just listen to that voice. That voice is really important. If you're hearing it, the first thing I want to tell you is it's giving you feedback. It's telling you something, and you can push it away, but it's knocking at your heart. It's asking to be listened to. And what happens is many of us spend a lifetime pushing that voice down, and we get to the end of the life, in our 70s, 60s, 70s, and we go, man, I wish I would have listened. I wish I would have tried whatever that voice was telling me to do. Maybe that could have been something had I listened. And so the second thing I want to say is let's create a life where we're listening to that voice and not pushing it away, but we say, we get curious and we go, if I were to really do that, what's the first step I would have to take? And then we just do that. We do that first step without having to know the plan. Because that's what I did with this house. I just put the house on the market and I said, I'm not quite sure where we're going to go with these 3 kids and a very limited budget, but I feel like this is what I should do. And so we spent months with the house on the market, months showing it and keeping it clean, which was terrible. It was really hard. Until finally I was listening to that intuition again and I said, you know what, I think we should pull the house off the market. It's just not going anywhere. We've so far been able to pay the bills with what we're making every month. Let's just stay. You know, we'll see if we can make it work. Because at the moment, that's what I felt that voice was saying to me. And here's the third thing I want to say to you. Am I on number 3, maybe 4? I don't know. But here's another thing I want to say to you, is this. Sometimes you start to listen to that voice and you make these decisions because you're following that voice. And then in the next moment, you hear the voice, you hear that intuition, and it feels like the opposite of everything you've been doing. You know, in that moment I felt like I should pull the house back off the market. And so I did. But it was crazy because I felt like the voice was telling me to put the house on the market. And I think in that moment, sometimes then that moment is really ripe for like, I don't know what I'm doing. One day I hear my intuition saying this, and the next day I hear it saying that, and it feels like it's contradictory, and maybe my intuition shouldn't be trusted. Maybe it's just indigestion. Maybe I'm not hearing it right and I'm not meant to live this way. And then we start looking outside of ourselves for voices that maybe make more sense. But here's the other thing I want to tell you. Maybe number 4. Do it. Just follow that voice. Because it's okay to get it wrong. It's okay to backtrack. It's okay to give permission to yourself to look like you don't know what you're doing. It's okay for people to misunderstand you and think you don't know what you're doing. Because it's truly the act of like daily relying on that voice and following. And you build this life when you do that, of doing really amazing things that feel really important to you. And even if only to you, that's okay. Because we're who we're living for in this moment. We've got to be true to ourselves, right? Okay, so let me tell you what happened. I pulled the house off the market, and that very next day, I kid you not, the very next day, my realtor called me and said, you have an offer on the house, from someone who had seen the house before. But they'd like to put in an offer on the house. And I was like, we were about to pull the house off the market. And the realtor said, oh no, they'd like you out in 30 days. 30 days? Okay, I was ready like a few months before, 8 months I think it was on the market for. I was ready then to downsize, but I had just started to make that decision to settle in. Okay, here's the next thing I want you to know. If you hold the outcome in an open hand and you're flexible to what that can look like, even from day to day. People are going to say that makes you wishy-washy. People are going to say that makes you flighty. But I want to say that our intuition knows best. I mean, take wise counsel, sure. Like, be smart, right? But sometimes, and I'm not trying to convince you, but I think the people that have that inkling know. They know when that voice is talking to them. Like, you know. You talk yourself out of it, but I think you know. And so here I was. I just made the decision to leave, to stay. And now I had to make the decision whether or not to leave. And so I was a night of really wrestling with what do we do and thinking through the scenarios. And I said, where would we go? I mean, we've got to find a house. We've got to buy a house. In 30 days, we're going to be homeless. What does that look like? And my husband had a job at that time, and he left for work the next morning. And I sat down and I said, okay, what's possible? That's the next thing I want to remind you of. Sometimes when you start to listen to your voice, your inner wisdom, and when you get quiet with that voice and you really start to follow its lead, if you stay curious, instead of going, well, the house is gonna be sold in 30 days, let's find another house. You jump immediately into it. Before you jump, I want to say, sit with it for a second. Get quiet. This is why I'm doing this style of video. It's because I feel like life is very fast. We have Instagram, we have TikTok, everything's 15 seconds. Everything is I watch it for 3 seconds and I swipe. And this is a real big opportunity for me to sit and have a conversation. And we don't do that a lot anymore. We're like, lady, get to the point. What do you want to say to me? Because I have other things I need to do. That's why I said in the beginning, set me down and let me just be that friend that talks to you with some tea. And in that slowness, in that practice of slowing down, I think there's also value in slowing, in living, bringing that into our decision making and slowing down and going, what does this make possible? And just take a beat to be what does life look like if we do this? And I did that. So I said, I did that in this moment, in this very critical moment. Instead of going straight to Zillow or, straight to find a house, I said, what does this make possible? What if, that's a really important question starter. I don't know what number I'm on, but really, really important. What if? And that's what I did. I said, okay, what if we didn't get a house? Okay, stay with me. What if we traveled? Because when I got quiet, I remembered I really come alive when I'm traveling. I don't know about you, but I love getting on the road and seeing places. What if we took that money that we would normally pay for a mortgage and electricity and homeowners insurance and all the things and yard maintenance, and we took that pile of money and we said, where could we go with this money this month? What if we actually didn't get a house? What if we traveled every month? It's crazy, right? Okay, that's another thing I want to say, is that sometimes the next step sounds crazy. Are you even adulting? People are going to start to worry about you. They're going to say, do you have substance abuse problems? What is this? Or do you have 1 year left to live? What are you doing? what's causing you to make these rash decisions? People will say that. People will say, this is rash. You haven't thought that through. Not having a house, you need a house. What does that? Well, I'm feeling like maybe I want to try something new. And so I did. We called that time, that season, trading our mortgage for memories. And so here's what I did. We sold a lot of things. We put our most valuable things and beds and, dishes. We put those things into a storage unit. We took all the money that we would make that month. My husband had the opportunity to go remote with his job, so he didn't have to go into an office. And I looked on Airbnb and found a place in San Diego that was less than what we were paying in our mortgage, because when you book an Airbnb for longer periods of time, you often can get deals. So then we booked 4 flights to San Diego. We each had a carry-on, and we went to San Diego and lived for a month. I didn't know what we were going to do after that. The whole time I was like, well, maybe this is just a month thing, and maybe we will find a house after that. But here's what happened. We didn't do that. We went another month and we did something else, and we found something else, and then another month. And then I was like, well, what if we went to Aruba? Like, there's some really cheap flights right now, really cheap. But Aruba, I mean, like, how much would that be? That's crazy, right? Oh, wait, I just found this like live-in apartment, motel kind of thing for less than what we would pay for our mortgage, because we'd stay for so long, for a month. And so we went to Aruba and we lived in Aruba for a month. I kid you not. Like, you can't plan this stuff out. When you start to listen to that beating in your heart where it goes, get curious about life and like live, like really live. Like, what if you don't have to follow the plan? And what if you just try something wild? Like, you end up in Aruba for a month, living and swimming at the beach every day. And we lived in this place that had like 8 apartments surrounding this pool, this infinity pool. And every morning I would homeschool the kids and they would swim, and then we would go to the beach. And what kind of life is that? It's a life that like listened to intuition, followed the little pebbles down a path, and it got me there. And then people started saying, well, okay, where are you? Because where are you? Where do we send your mail? And I said, okay, well, let me just start writing like a blog. That seems kind of fun. And then people can kind of follow us where we are, and friends can see where we are that month and how we got there and the things that we're doing, and they can see pictures of the kids. Well, as I started to do that, okay, just stay with me, because I know that this feels rambling, but it's really not, because this is what it looks like, and I don't know how else to tell you except for this story. So my kids were in Aruba, and we were watching this movie called Dolphin Tale, and Dolphin Tale was about this dolphin who lost her tail, but she had a prosthetic tail, and it's really a great movie, and it's a real story about this dolphin. And the dolphin lives in an aquarium in Clearwater, Florida. And so after Aruba, I was like, what if we went to Clearwater? Because like, how fun would that be for the kids to watch a movie and then see the dolphin? Like, what? That's crazy. Let's go do that. And so I looked up places near Clearwater, and we found a place we could afford for a month. We took that money and we went to Clearwater. And then I talked to the people when I took my kids to the aquarium, and I talked to the management there, and had said, gosh, my kids really, really loved it. I told our story. And then they gave us these tickets, and they gave us this swag, and my kids had these like stuffed animals, and they really treated us to this really great experience at the aquarium. And then I was like, wait a second, let me write about this, because it was such a great story. And I wrote about it, and then I got called by the city that we were in Florida, and they had read my article somehow, and they wanted to interview me because we were traveling the world month by month, and they thought our story was really cool. And I got interviewed by this, what? I just quit my job. Like, I was just living a really crazy, what felt like a whim, but it's intuition. And I followed that, and then I discovered, I think there's a way that we could do this in every city we go to. And I followed these paths, these pebbles, and a few months later, I was travel writing, and I was being asked to come to cities, and the cities would love for us to tell their story. And so then they started hosting us as a family and giving us these experiences at their attractions. And now our travel started to get funded, and we got hotel stays, and we got tickets to see things in every city, and treated really, really well. And my kids got room service, and they got to stay in these beautiful hotels, and we got behind the scene passes at zoos. Oh, like, I walked into a job called travel writing. No one told me about that. Anyway, I could tell you a lifetime of stories of things working out that way. I say all of that just because I want to bring it back to you. What is it that your intuition's telling you to do? It's okay if it feels wild and crazy. It's okay if you don't even know where it's going to lead. It's okay if people around you think you sound rash and like you're not living in real life. It's okay. What do you want to do with your one wild and crazy life? What do you want to do? Because you can live it any way you want. That's the beautiful thing. You're the designer of your life. And if you're fed up, and if you know things need to change, you're the one who gets to decide that. Isn't that exciting? I was sitting at a desk in Alabama, miserable at my job, crying on my way home, not feeling like there was any way out. I felt stuck by money, by options, I felt stuck. And when I started listening and following, I'm not going to tell you every time worked out beautifully. This isn't magical thinking, but this is taking back power, remembering what's important to you, and coming alive in life. This is what this is. This isn't always working out. I can tell you lots of stories where it didn't work out, and maybe that's another video. Maybe you want to hear about the times it didn't work out, but I can tell you, even when it didn't work out, it did work out, right? Because then I just switched plans. I backtracked. I made the most of that moment, and I lived in that moment. But anyway, from crying every day, not understanding how things could change, to this, I'm sitting in Lisbon, Portugal. Guys, it's totally possible for you to follow your passions. So what do you want to do?